The front door clicked shut behind me with a soft, final sound. I had taken the entire afternoon off for my 58th birthday, a rare and, I now realized, foolish indulgence. A sentimental hope had warmed me all day, a childish belief that this year might be different. The house was quiet, filled with the familiar sense of lemon-scented polish and the faint, expensive floral perfume Catherine had worn for as long as I could remember. Then I heard them. Their voices, sharp and unmistakable, drifted from the kitchen, punctuated by bursts of laughter that had a cruel, jagged edge. I froze in the shadowed hallway, my old winter coat still on, a forgotten weight on my shoulders. It was Catherine and her mother, Eleanor. Catherine was putting on a voice, a high, reedy, pathetic imitation that was meant to be me. "We must be prudent with the grocery budget this week, dear," she whined mockingly, drawing out the word prudent as if it were a disease. Eleanor's cackle was a dry, rattling sound that grated on my nerves. "A comfortable, boring failure," my wife said then, her own voice dropping into a tone of such pure, icy contempt that it felt like a physical blow to my chest. 30 years of his life, dedicated to that soul-crushing job, and for what? That pathetic little pension. I could have done so much better. I should have. I stood there, paralyzed, a ghost in my own home. The birthday card I had foolishly bought for myself, a silly, hopeful gesture, felt like a lead weight in my pocket. The entire foundation of the life I thought I was building, the world of quiet dedication and provision, crumbled into dust and ashes with every poisonous word she spoke. I did not call out. I did not let my presence be known. The shock was too complete, the hurt too profound. I simply turned, my movements slow and heavy as if I were moving through deep water, and retreated back through the laundry room into the cold, dim garage. This was my true sanctuary, a place of honest, unpretentious smells, high-octane gasoline, fresh sawdust, and damp concrete. Here, the controlled chaos of my tools represented an order I understood, a logic that never betrayed me. My heart was a cold, dead weight in my chest, each beat an ache. I went to the heavy, red metal tool chest my father had given me when I bought my first house. My hands, which could rebuild a carburetor or fix a leaky faucet without a tremor, were now shaking uncontrollably. I reached deep behind it, my fingers brushing against forgotten cobwebs, and pulled out a small, locked metal box. It was cool and dusty to the touch. The key for it was on my key ring, nestled unassumingly between the key to my city office and the one for the garden shed. Inside, nestled on faded velvet that had once been blue, were the artifacts of a man I had once promised myself I would become. My engineering degree, the paper crisp but yellowed at the edges. A faded photograph of my father and me on my graduation day, his hand a firm, proud weight on my shoulder, his eyes full of a future I had somehow lost. And another key, older and more yellowed than the rest, for a safety deposit box I hadn't visited in over 30 years. I held it tight, the metal teeth pressing a familiar pattern into my palm, a silent, long-forgotten promise from a past self. The next day, I told my secretary I had a series of dental appointments. The lie came to my lips with an unsettling ease, another small crack in the already fractured foundation of my life. I drove to the grand old bank downtown, a building of solid marble and polished brass that seemed to belong to a more substantial, honest era. The safety deposit box was heavier than I remembered, its weight both physical and symbolic. I carried it to the private, wood-paneled room and set it on the table with a solid, echoing thud. Inside, beneath a fine layer of dust that spoke of years of neglect, was my Uncle Henry's last will and testament. My mother's brother, a man the rest of the family, Eleanor especially, had consistently dismissed as a reclusive, eccentric miser. They had mocked his frugal habits, his simple cottage by the lake, his quiet life. But the legal document in my hands was clear and unambiguous. It named me, Arthur, as his sole and only heir. Underneath the will was a thick stack of bound financial statements. I pulled the most recent one out, my fingers leaving streaks in the dust. The numbers on the page blurred, then swam into a focus that made my heart stutter. It detailed a conservative but robust portfolio of blue-chip stocks, solid government bonds, and a cash holding that made my head spin. It was a fortune. A sum of money that utterly dwarfed the entire lifetime of salaries I had earned, meticulously saved, and diligently provided for my family. I had been too proud, too stubborn to ever touch it, wanting to prove to myself, and to everyone else, that I could build a respectable life entirely on my own merit. Now, sitting in that silent, sterile room, the money felt less like an inheritance and more like a long-forgotten weapon, loaded and waiting for my hand to finally pick it up. Catherine had never held a job, not for a single day in her life. Her world was a carefully curated and endlessly repetitive circuit of charity luncheons, garden club meetings, and long, lazy afternoons spent browsing shops she had no intention of buying from. But within that shallow world, she possessed one single, all-consuming passion, a charming, narrow little shop called the Velvet Thimble. It was a fabric and craft store nestled in the very heart of our town's quaint, historic shopping district, with a beautiful, curved bay window and a cheerful, freshly painted green door. She spent countless hours there, running her fingers over bolts of shimmering Italian silk and delicate French lace, cooing over spools of satin ribbon and shelves of delicate, pearlized buttons. She was on a first-name basis with the elderly owner, a sharp and kind woman named Maureen, and for years her constant, wistful refrain had been, when Maureen finally decides to retire, "I'm going to buy that store, Arthur. It's my soulmate store. It's the only place that truly understands me." I had always nodded, offering a gentle, absent-minded smile, genuinely pleased that she had found something, anything, that seemed to bring her a spark of joy. I had seen it as a harmless, if expensive, hobby. Now, with the echo of her cruel laughter still ringing in my ears, that same passion felt like a glaring vulnerability, a key that could unlock a very specific and deeply satisfying kind of prison for her. That evening, the atmosphere at the dinner table was thick with a silence that only I understood the true depth of. Catherine placed a small, cellophane-wrapped, store-bought chocolate cake in the center of the table. There were no candles. No festive plates or napkins. It was just, there. "Happy birthday," she said, her tone as flat and unenthusiastic as her expression. Eleanor, who had seemingly taken up permanent residence in our home since her own husband passed, watched me from her seat with a thin, smug smile that didn't reach her cold eyes. I ate a slice of the cake. It was dry, overly sweet, and it stuck in my throat like sawdust. I looked at my wife, this woman whose face I had woken up to for 3 decades, and saw a complete and utter stranger. The raw, bleeding hurt inside me began to cool and solidify, transforming in the furnace of my shame into something hard, sharp, and relentlessly determined. I would not give them the satisfaction of a messy, emotional fight. I would not shed a single tear in their presence. I would use the very qualities they ridiculed, my caution, my prudence, my boring, methodical, plodding nature. I would be patient. I would be meticulous. I would be ruthless in my quiet way. And I would systematically acquire the one thing in the world she truly believed was her divine right. I would buy her dream store out from under her, and I would do it with the very money she thought made me insignificant. A full, tense week passed, a week of me moving through my life like a well-programmed automaton. At work, I reviewed municipal budgets and infrastructure reports with robotic efficiency. At home, I nodded and gave non-committal grunts at Catherine's inane chatter about her friends and her clubs. But inside me, a new, powerful engine was humming to life, its gears turning with a purpose I had almost forgotten. I went to the public library, using a computer in a secluded corner to set up a private, completely anonymous email account. Then, with a steady hand I hadn't felt in days, I found the official website for the Velvet Thimble. I composed a message to Maureen, each word chosen with careful, professional precision. I introduced myself as a private, local investor with a keen interest in preserving the unique character of small downtown businesses. I expressed sincere admiration for the establishment she had so clearly built with love and dedication and respectfully requested a confidential, discreet meeting to discuss its future, emphasizing my desire for complete and utter anonymity. I read the message over twice, my heart thudding a slow, heavy, but steady rhythm in my chest. Then I took a deep breath and clicked send. The die was cast. The first domino had been tipped, and I felt a grim satisfaction watching it fall. Maureen's reply arrived in my secret inbox less than 24 hours later, a small but significant victory. She agreed to meet me at a small, quiet cafe across town, a place where we were both unlikely to be recognized by anyone we knew. She was already there when I arrived, a woman in her late 60s with a cloud of soft white hair and eyes that were both kind and held a fiercely intelligent, assessing glint. She watched me over the rim of her porcelain coffee cup as I sat down opposite her. I had planned a whole speech, an elaborate cover story about my investment portfolio, but the words died in my throat. The honesty of this stranger's gaze disarmed me completely. Instead, I found myself telling her the truth. I didn't use names, but I laid it all out: the dedicated, faithful husband, the 30 years of steady providing, the devastating birthday betrayal, the specific, cruel words I had overheard from the kitchen. I even told her about the inheritance from my uncle, the money that had sat untouched for decades. I expected disbelief, or perhaps even mockery. Instead, she listened intently, her expression softening with a deep, weary sadness that told me she understood the landscape of human disappointment all too well. "I know the type," she said quietly, stirring her spoon in slow circles. "She comes in often. Talks about my store as if it's already hers, as if my life's work is just waiting for her to claim it. There's no respect for the work, only for the idea of it. I built this place with my own 2 hands, with sweat and sacrifice. I need a custodian for my legacy, not a spoiled tourist." Her understanding felt like a benediction, a validation that steadied my resolve. We talked for over 2 hours, the coffee in our cups growing cold. Maureen wasn't just selling a business, she was interviewing a successor for her life's work. She loved the velvet thimble with a ferocity I admired, and her greatest fear was that it would be run into the ground by someone who saw it as a mere plaything, a rich woman's hobby. We negotiated the core of a deal right there at that small, sticky table. I would purchase the business and the building it occupied, a freestanding property she owned outright. The price she named was more than fair, a testament to her inherent integrity. I would pay in cash, drawn from the separate inheritance account, making it a clean, legally distinct premarital asset. But she had one non-negotiable condition, a clause that was perfect for my needs. She would remain as the store's manager and public face for a transition period of 6 months. This would ensure a smooth handover and, most critically, maintain the secret. No one, and I emphasized no one, especially my wife, was to know that I was the new owner. Our agreement was sealed not with a lawyer's document in that moment, but with a firm, warm handshake, a pact of quiet vengeance and mutual respect that felt more binding than any contract could ever be. Overnight, my life became a carefully orchestrated performance, a double act of profound complexity. By day, I was Arthur the reliable civil servant, putting on my worn suit and tie, driving my sensible sedan to my unremarkable office, and discussing sewer-line budgets and park maintenance with colleagues who saw me as dependable and utterly unremarkable. But after 5 p.m., I became someone else, a man reborn. I told Catherine I had late meetings, or that I was running errands for a sick friend, or helping a colleague with a home renovation project. Instead, I would drive to the back alley behind the velvet thimble and let myself in through the unmarked rear entrance. In the small, cluttered back office that smelled of paper and old coffee, Maureen became my patient teacher. She showed me the intricate, delicate dance of running a small retail business. I learned the complex inventory software, memorized the names and reputations of fabric suppliers from across the globe, and analyzed the delicate profit margins on every spool of thread and every yard of linen. The numbers, the patterns, the sheer logic of it all spoke directly to my orderly, engineer's mind. For the first time in 30 years, I felt a spark of genuine excitement, a sense of building something that was truly, wholly mine. This was my secret project, my masterpiece of redemption. The first real test of my resolve and my acting abilities came on a rainy, gloomy Thursday evening. Catherine burst through the front door, her face a mask of genuine, unvarnished panic, her expensive coat dripping rainwater onto the clean floor. "Arthur. It's a disaster. A complete catastrophe," she cried, her voice shrill and trembling. I was just at the velvet thimble. Maureen told me she's retiring. Formally retiring. And she said there's already a mystery buyer, some silent partner who's made a very serious offer. She rushed to me, grabbing my arm with a desperate, painful strength, her nails digging into my sleeve. We have to do something. We have to get to the bank first thing tomorrow morning. We can take out a second mortgage, we can use the house as collateral, we have to make a competing offer. I looked at her, at the real, visceral fear in her eyes, and felt a strange, cold calm settle over me, insulating me from her hysteria. This woman, who had spent a lifetime thinking me a financial simpleton, was now begging me, the boring provider, to swoop in and save her precious dream. I gently but firmly pried her fingers from my arm and walked to the old oak desk, picking up a notepad and a simple calculator. I began to calmly, methodically, and with excruciating slowness, outline the numbers. The staggering, punitive cost of a commercial loan, the sky-high interest rates, the slim to none chance of a small fabric store ever generating enough profit to cover the massive monthly payments. It's not a sound financial investment, Catherine, I said, my voice as flat and boring as she had always accused me of being. The risk is far too great. It would be financial suicide. She stared at me, her panic curdling, transforming right before my eyes into pure, unadulterated fury at my refusal to play the gallant hero. Eleanor came for dinner the following night, summoned by her daughter's distress. The air in the dining room was thick and sour with Catherine's sulking resentment. He won't even try, Mother, she whined, pushing her food around her plate with a petulant fork. No vision. No courage. No guts. Just like you've always said. Eleanor reached over and patted her daughter's hand, her eyes, like shards of flint, slicing toward me from across the table. You see, Catherine? What did I tell you? No backbone. No ambition. You should have married that surgeon, Michael. Now there was a man who knew how to go after what he wanted. He had real drive. I took a slow, deliberate bite of my mashed potatoes. I chewed thoroughly, savoring the bland taste, saying absolutely nothing in my own defense. I didn't need to. Inside, a part of me was smiling a cold, hard, private smile. They were so utterly, completely confident in their shallow assessment of me. They had no idea, not even an inkling, that the mystery buyer they so despised was calmly eating pot roast with them, and his meticulous, satisfying plan was only just beginning to unfold. A practical problem arose, as they always do. The store's decades-old heating system was wheezing on its last legs, and the roof had developed a persistent, nagging leak near the back storage room that threatened the expensive inventory. Maureen was worried. These major repairs were a cost she could no longer comfortably bear from the store's operating budget. I saw it not as a problem, but as a perfect opportunity. I immediately authorized the work, feeling a thrill at being able to make such a decisive move. Using my capital, Maureen hired the best, most reputable contractors in town, paying them a bonus for a swift and discreet job. Within 10 days, the store was filled with a steady, comforting, dry warmth it had likely never known, and the roof was sealed tight against the elements. Catherine came home from her daily visit utterly bewildered, a strange look on her face. It's a miracle, she announced, dropping her shopping bags on the floor with a thud. The store is so warm and dry. It's like a different place. Maureen said the new owner approved all the repairs immediately, no questions asked. He must be a wonderful man, a real visionary, someone who appreciates quality. I nodded from my worn armchair, not looking up from my book. That's good, I said, my voice perfectly, boringly neutral. A very prudent decision. It preserves the long-term value of the asset. Eleanor, infuriated by the mystery buyer's apparent competence and generosity, decided to take matters into her own hands. She convinced Catherine that the only way to win was to use her own money, a sizable, untouched sum she had inherited from her father, to present a swift, aggressive, lowball cash offer that Maureen, in her retirement, wouldn't be able to refuse. For the next 2 weeks, our kitchen table was transformed into their command center, their war room. It was buried under an avalanche of financial statements, legal pads filled with their messy, optimistic calculations, and glossy brochures they had pilfered from the store. They giggled and schemed like teenage girls, their excitement a palpable, giddy force in the house. They fantasized aloud about taking over, about finally having a real project to sink their teeth into, about the social status and purpose it would bring them. They even talked, in hushed, conspiratorial tones, about letting Maureen go, as one of their very first, decisive acts as new owners. I listened to it all from the adjoining living room, saying nothing, sipping my evening tea. I watched the eager, greedy light in their eyes, knowing with a cold, absolute certainty the profound and humiliating disappointment I had already orchestrated for them. The day their formal, insultingly low offer was submitted, Maureen, following my precise, prearranged instructions, called Catherine directly. I was sitting in my usual chair, the newspaper held up as a shield, the print a blur I wasn't reading. I heard Catherine's side of the conversation, her voice initially bright, confident, and full of misplaced triumph. Maureen. Hello. Yes, we're so excited to hear what you think. Oh. A more visionary bid? What does that even? I see. Her voice grew smaller, tighter, like a rope being pulled taut until it was ready to snap. No, I understand. Thank you for letting me know. The phone clicked back into its cradle with a sound of finality. The silence that followed was profound and heavy, a physical weight in the room. Then, a guttural, enraged scream tore from her throat, a sound of pure, primal frustration. They rejected us. She shrieked, her voice cracking with the strain. Some faceless, heartless corporation. They stole my store. They stole it from me. I heard the sound of something small and glassy, probably a perfume bottle from the hall table, shattering against the wall. I slowly, deliberately, turned the page of my newspaper, the rustle of the paper the only sound I made in the face of her devastation. The legal sale was finalized shortly after, the paperwork signed and filed away in my new safety deposit box. Maureen made a formal, cheerful announcement to her loyal customers and taped a neatly printed, professional sign to the inside of the front door. The Velvet Thimble would be closed for 1 full week for a comprehensive inventory and revitalization process under its new ownership. Catherine entered a state of deep, performative mourning. She drifted through the house in her silk robe for days, sighing dramatically, speaking of the store in the past tense as if it were a beloved family member who had suddenly passed away. It's all over, she'd lament to anyone who would listen, which was mostly her mother on the telephone. They'll probably rip out the soul of the place. Paint it some awful modern color. Turn it into some cheap, soulless chain store. The urge to reveal the truth, to see the look of stunned realization on her face, was a physical, almost painful ache in my chest. But I savored the anticipation. I was a gardener tending a rare and precious seed. I knew the longer I waited, the deeper the roots of her despair would grow, and the sweeter, more devastating, the eventual harvest would be. The week the store was closed felt like a year, a strange, suspended period of time. Catherine was a live wire of nervous anxiety and bitter grief, her moods swinging wildly. Finally, the long-awaited day of the grand reopening arrived. We have to go, Arthur. Right this minute, she insisted, her voice trembling with a mixture of dread and morbid curiosity. I have to see what they've done to it. I have to see it one last time, to say a proper goodbye. She practically dragged me out of the house and down the sidewalk, her grip on my arm like iron. The streets around the store were unusually busy, the air buzzing with a festive energy. A crowd had gathered on the pavement outside the Velvet Thimble, their voices a murmur of excitement. The place was utterly transformed. The windows gleamed, spotless and bright. New, warm, golden track lighting glowed from within, making the rich jewel tones of the silks and wools inside look more vibrant than ever. A fresh coat of a deep, elegant navy paint made the entire building look proud, revitalized, and profoundly expensive. Catherine stared, her face pale and waxy, her hand fluttering to her throat as if she were choking. She looked like she was going to be physically sick right there on the sidewalk. She gripped my arm like a vice and pulled me through the chattering, excited crowd, across the familiar threshold. The store was packed, buzzing with energy. The air was thick with the smell of new, high-quality fabric and freshly brewed coffee, which Maureen was offering to guests. And there, standing proudly in the center of it all like a queen holding court, was Maureen, beaming, looking 10 years younger, her eyes bright. Her gaze scanned the room and landed directly, unerringly, on us. Catherine immediately let go of my arm and straightened her posture, a faint, hopeful, pathetic smile touching her lips, expecting Maureen to come and commiserate with her, the store's most loyal and now most heartbroken patron. Maureen walked toward us, but her warm, steady gaze never left mine. She held out a large, ornate, ceremonial key, the kind used for photo opportunities and ribbon-cutting ceremonies. "Welcome home, boss," she said, her voice ringing out clear and strong, cutting through the ambient noise like a bell. "The keys to your store." Every conversation in the room, every laugh, every comment, ceased mid-sentence, swallowed by a sudden, profound silence. The silence was absolute, a living, breathing presence pressing in on us from all sides. You could hear the faint, almost imperceptible hum of the new energy-efficient lighting fixtures. You could hear the rustle of someone's coat as they shifted their weight. Every single person in that shop, customers and staff alike, turned in unison to stare, their faces a canvas of curiosity and confusion. Catherine's head swiveled slowly, mechanically, from Maureen's smiling, triumphant face to my own impassive, calm one. Her expression was a slow-motion tragedy, a play in 3 acts. First, simple, uncomprehending confusion, her brain stubbornly refusing to process the words she had just heard. Then, a dawning, horrifying comprehension that drained the color from her face, leaving it a ghastly shade of gray. Finally, her features collapsed completely into a mask of utter, complete, and total disbelief. Her jaw went slack. Her eyes widened, unblinking, reflecting a world that had just been violently turned inside out. She looked at the giant, ridiculous key, then back at my calm, steady gaze. I held her look, my own face a placid, unreadable lake, giving away nothing. No triumph. No anger. Nothing. I was the owner. The boss. The mystery. The quiet, boring man who had just pulled the rug out from under her entire existence. The silence that surrounded us was more powerful and more damning than any scream could ever have been. The drive home was conducted in a vacuum of sound, a 5-minute journey that felt like an eternity in purgatory. Neither of us spoke a single word. The moment our front door clicked shut, sealing us inside the tomb of our marriage, the dam broke with catastrophic force. "You monster!" Catherine shrieked, her voice raw and ragged, tearing from a place of pure, unhinged fury. "You deceitful, lying, pathetic monster!" She was hysterical, tears of rage and humiliation streaming down her contorted face. She snatched a small, delicate porcelain vase from the hallway console table, a gift from her mother, and hurled it against the wall with all her strength, where it exploded into 1,000 meaningless white shards. She called me every vile, hateful name she could conjure, her vocabulary of contempt astonishing in its breadth. Eleanor arrived within minutes, summoned by a frantic, sobbing, nearly incoherent phone call. She immediately began shrieking about lawyers, lawsuits, and prenuptial agreements, her bony finger jabbing the air toward me like a weapon. I stood silently in the center of the storm, a rock in a hurricane, letting their fury and outrage crash against me. When a momentary, breathless lull arrived, I spoke, my voice low and steady, cutting through their noise. "You mocked the provider. So I provided for myself. You coveted the store. So I own it." The stark, simple truth of the statement seemed to inflame them even more, its clarity a mirror they could not bear to look into. Their tirade escalated, now spiraling into wild, baseless accusations of embezzlement, of me being a con artist who had hidden money for years, a secret criminal living a double life. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I simply walked to the old, scarred wooden desk in the corner of the living room, a piece of furniture Catherine had always hated for its lack of style. I opened the top drawer and retrieved a small, black, unassuming digital voice recorder, the one I'd used for years to dictate work memos and notes to myself. Our state was a one-party consent state. I had broken no laws. I had only protected myself, a habit they had always mocked. I pressed play. The room was instantly filled with the crisp, clear sound of their own voices from my birthday. Catherine's mocking, nasal whine, "We must be prudent," followed by Eleanor's dry, ugly cackle, and then my wife's clear, cruel, unmistakable declaration, a comfortable, boring failure. I could have done so much better, all he has is that pathetic pension. I stopped the recording. The ensuing silence in the room was deeper, more profound, and more terrifying than the one in the store. The unvarnished, recorded truth, played back in their own venomous voices, was the ultimate weapon, a sword against which their hysteria had no defense. Into that ringing, horrified silence, I laid out the new, stark, and irrevocable reality. I was moving out. Tonight. I had already rented a clean, furnished apartment downtown, the lease signed a month ago. My lawyer had the divorce papers ready and would be filing them first thing in the morning. The velvet thimble, I explained with calm finality, was my separate property, acquired entirely with premarital funds, my uncle's inheritance, which had never once commingled with a single shared account. They had no legal claim to it whatsoever. I offered Catherine a choice, my voice still terrifyingly calm and even. She could accept a fair, standard divorce settlement based solely on my civil service salary and our limited shared marital assets, which were, as she knew, modest. Or, she could choose a long, expensive, emotionally draining, and publicly brutal court battle. And in that battle, I stated with cold precision, would play this recording for the judge to establish the true character and breakdown of our marriage. I let the image of that humiliation, her own voice echoing in a silent, solemn courtroom, hang in the air between us, watching as the grim understanding of her powerlessness finally sank in. The sight of their complete and utter powerlessness finally broke them, and they turned on each other with the venom they had once reserved exclusively for me. "This is your fault." Catherine screamed at her mother, her face contorted with a rage I had never seen, a mask of pure hatred. You were the one who filled my head with all that nonsense about surgeons and sports cars and a glamorous life. You poisoned me against him. You made me believe he was never enough. Eleanor recoiled as if slapped, her own fury erupting in a torrent of bitter resentment. "Don't you dare blame me, you weak, spoiled little girl. You were never strong enough or smart enough to aim higher on your own. You settled for this accountant because you were scared of a real man, because you wanted a safe, easy life. This is on you." They were like two animals caught in a trap, tearing each other apart in a desperate, futile attempt to escape. Their once unshakable alliance, built on a foundation of shared superiority, shattered into 1,000 bitter pieces right there on the living room carpet, amidst the glittering wreckage of the vase. I walked calmly to the garage, picked up the single, packed suitcase I had prepared and hidden there a week prior, and left. They were so consumed by their mutual, searing hatred that they didn't even see me go. I closed the door softly on the ruins of my old life. The divorce moved with a swift, clinical, almost antiseptic efficiency. About a month after I had left, I was in the bright, organized back office of my store, happily going over a new supplier's catalog for organic cotton, when the gentle, familiar bell above the front door chimed. A moment later, Maureen appeared in the doorway, her expression somber and a little sad. "Arthur," she said softly. "She's here. She's asking for you." I nodded, took a steadying breath, and walked out onto the bustling shop floor. Catherine stood near a beautiful display of richly colored Scottish wools, looking thin, faded, and much older, like a photograph left too long in the sun. The fire of her anger was gone from her eyes, replaced by a hollow, hopeless sadness that was, in its own way, even more unsettling. "Arthur," she whispered, her voice cracking on the second syllable of my name. "Please. That store, it's my dream. It's all I've ever really wanted. You can't keep it from me. Not like this. Please, let me buy in. Let me work here. Let me be a part of it. I'll do anything. I looked at her, and for a fleeting, painful second, I felt the ghost of the love I once had for her, a faint, sad echo from a lifetime ago. Then the memory of her laughter from the kitchen rose up, vivid and cruel, and the feeling vanished. It was my dream to be a husband you were proud of, I said, my voice gentle but unyielding, final. You destroyed that dream long before I ever bought this one. A full year drifted by, marked not by the pages of a calendar but by the changing seasonal displays in the store's front window and the rhythm of loyal customers. The divorce was final, the papers signed and filed away, a closed chapter. I submitted my retirement papers to the municipality, a moment of quiet, profound satisfaction. The velvet thimble was now my entire world, my purpose, and it was flourishing in a way that filled me with pride. My so-called boring nature, my love for detailed spreadsheets, my methodical tracking of inventory, my prudent financial management, had streamlined operations, eliminated waste, and quietly doubled the store's profits. Maureen still came in 3 days a week, my invaluable consultant, my fierce defender, and, I was proud to say, my genuine friend. I had found a peace and a sense of accomplishment that had been entirely absent from my previous life. The people in our small town now greeted me as Arthur, from the Velvet Thimble, with a respect that was earned through hard work and integrity, not merely expected through habit. I had patiently, methodically dismantled the life built on mockery and neglect and had rebuilt a new one, brick by brick, on a foundation of quiet dignity, passion, and honest effort. I was, for the first time in decades, truly and completely, and unshakably happy. It was a peaceful, sunny Tuesday afternoon. Light streamed through the clean, sparkling bay window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. I was at the central cutting table, patiently helping a young, radiant couple measure out lengths of a soft, buttery yellow cotton for their first baby's quilt, their hopeful excitement a pleasure to witness. The gentle bell above the door jingled its familiar, welcoming tone. I looked up, a polite, automatic greeting on my lips, and the words died. It was Eleanor. She stood just inside the doorway, one hand still on the handle, as if afraid to fully cross the threshold into my domain. She seemed to have aged a decade in the past year, her posture stooped, her usually crisp, expensive clothes hanging loosely on her diminished frame. She didn't speak. She didn't ask for anything. Her eyes, once so sharp, critical, and full of scorn, slowly, painfully scanned the vibrant, successful store. They took in the well-organized, abundant shelves, the happy customers browsing contentedly, the beautiful, rich colors of the fabrics, the entire new life I had built from the ashes of her disdain. Finally, her weary gaze traveled across the room and landed on me. I met it squarely, my expression one of calm contentment, quiet pride, and utter peace. I was no longer the man she could mock. I was the owner. The success. The man who had won. She held my gaze for a long, silent moment, a universe of unspoken regrets, bitter realizations, and defeated acknowledgement passing between us. Then, without a single word, she turned, opened the door, and disappeared back onto the sunlit street. The bell jingled once more, a final, faint, farewell note. I took a deep, clean breath, the air smelling of new cloth, coffee, and fresh possibilities. The last, frayed thread connecting me to that old life had finally been cut. The store was warm, bright, bustling with life and promise, and completely, wonderfully, and irrevocably mine.